What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Whiskey Delta, where we look for the movers and shakers in the military and veteran gaming community, the folks that cause mischief, mayhem, do amazing things like raise a staggering quantity of money for other military and veteran charities, have amazing inclusive content created environments where people can go feel included and just feel the love brought together and overcome all the nastiness that life has to bring. Our guest this evening is another fog whisperer. We've had one fog whisperer on here before, but her name is Tokki, aka Amanda. She has this amazing community called the Burrow, and we're going to get into it, why the Burrow is so absolutely fantastic and amazing, and why it's just buns all day. You can never have enough buns, but apparently the buns in this community are just absolutely fabulous. They're bouncing around, they're causing trouble, and we're going to learn why the Burrow is such a fabulous community to be in, and why this community is so good for the military and veteran gaming community as a whole, the gaming industry as a whole, and the leader of the Burrow, what she's done and what she has created and why it's so fabulous. So without further ado, I don't think my intro can get any longer. Tokki, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Whiskey Delta. We appreciate you so much. Hi, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
So let's talk a little bit about your love of video games.
Okay.
And kind of what got you into video games. I don't know that I personally have ever heard the story, so it's going to be a fresh one for me too. So what got you into gaming?
How far back are we going?
As far as you want.
I mean, like my first gaming console was a Sega Genesis.
That's not that far.
What? Well, the Sega Genesis was my first gaming console in elementary school. Echo the Dolphin and the Lion King game were my jam. And my dad got me into gaming, and then after that was my Nintendo 64 and Mario Kart. I lived and breathed Mario Kart. And I was a console gamer for much of my life. Moving into a love for like story-driven games, the Tomb Raider games, Assassin's Creed. And then I left the console world behind when I moved from my home in Florida, moved overseas to Seoul, South Korea, and took a hiatus from gaming altogether. I moved over there to teach, but console gaming is not popular there whatsoever. It is one of the like esports capitals of the world, if not like one of the most central esports capital of the world. And that's when I learned that like PC gaming was a whole nother sort of ballpark, a whole nother game. And I got this like $600 refurbished gaming PC, and I fell in love with gaming all over again when I got my little $600 refurbished gaming PC. Started out, my first ever games that I played on PC were Borderlands 2, and then Overwatch, and then Dead by Daylight. And that's where I'll say Korea, living in Korea is where like my real love of gaming started, where it really flourished, because I was a very casual gamer up until then. Like my console, I always had a console in the house. I mean, throughout my life with various, like I said, story-driven games, or I failed to mention my love of some of the Lego games and the Harry Potter games, but was always very, very casual. And then I started seriously picking it up as a hobby when I switched to PC gaming in Korea.
That is quite the story. The just branching of the ages, if you will, as you're coming around, and you're not just living. You're going from Florida to Korea, switching from console to PC, and basically never looking back.
That's
so
really
if I heard right,
did it. Like I don't know if I would have stayed in like America with console. I don't know that I would have like had the same passion and discovered like PC gaming and Twitch. I don't. It really is like what turned the tide for my passion with gaming.
So I heard that the Tokki brand itself was
Mhm.
born in Korea. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I hear there's a story behind that. There's a little bit of a story, and it's actually really endearing. And I'll let you go right into it. And why Tokki?
You are correct. There is a story behind behind that name. So as I mentioned, where like my real love of gaming started was Korea. Tokki is actually a Korean word. It means bunny rabbit in Korean. I was there for 5 years teaching English as a second language to Korean school age children, kindergarten, elementary through middle school. Um, and it is remarkably teaching is a it's not for everybody. Teaching is not for everyone. It's a taxing and challenging profession to be sure. Um, but it is even it's its own unique challenge teaching children in a language that is not their mother tongue. You have to, in general, kids have shorter attention spans and have boundless energy, and um, you have to pull out the stops to teach children, even when you're teaching them in their own language. When you're teaching them in a foreign language, you've got to really, really do something special to keep their attention. Otherwise, it goes like that. So I was quite silly, have always been quite silly in the classroom with the younger kids, with my middle school students. I mean, I taught them up until they were ready to go into high school and they were quite mature and too cool for school at that point. And you don't really do this with the middle school kids. But with the kindergarten, elementary school kids, I'm super goofy. I was pulling faces, hopping around the room as I was one day during a lesson, hopping around about the room, and they started calling me Tokki teacher, Tokki teacher, and because it's not Mr. and Mrs. Followed by a last name, the way it is in Western culture. In Korea, they call teachers, even professors, by the first name, followed by Songsaengnim, which means teacher in Korean. So usually Amanda teacher, but then they started calling me because of my antics, Tokki teacher. Um, that bled out of the classroom into the hallway, from my students to the faculty and staff, some of which were my friends outside of the workplace, and Tokki just caught on as a nickname. And I'm very fond of it, and it's very near and dear to me because it was given to me by my students. So that's how that started.
So we got the love of the game,
Mhm.
and we've got the formation of a brand.
Yes.
So so what brought in the pride and the military tradition that we hear about? If we're hanging out in the borough, every now and again it comes up, and just how you can literally just see tears of red, white, and blue come down your face anytime we talk about where it's talked about in the borough, what's going on with the military, what the things that are being done for folks struggling with PTSD, TBI, folks coming back from overseas, and needing a little pick me up, and you the borough just swells with love and pride, and just what brought that on?
As fond as I am of traveling and experiencing other cultures and learning different languages and being interested, even though I'm not like fluent, just linguistically interested in other alphabets and languages and cultures and food and music. Traveling has always been a very, very deep like love and passion of mine. But it never um never tops, like I'm still like a patriot at heart, even if I'm living 5 years abroad or going to school not in America. I went to school at some point in Europe as well. And even if I am away from my homeland, I'm definitely a patriot and love my country very, very much. Um, my paternal grandfather was in the military. He was in the Marines. Um, he be- went in when he was 17 years old. These stories, apologies if they're a bit fragmented, he died before I was born. So I never had the honor of meeting him, but was always passed down wonderful, wonderful stories. So my grandfather was in he was a Marine. He was in Vietnam. He served. He was security on the USS Iowa, and I grew up seeing pictures of him. I mean, black and white photos, but in his dress blues and his uniform, and grew up hearing stories of about how he courted my grand. No, this is going a little off topic here, but how he courted
Yeah,
my
you're fine.
grandmother and showed up at the door in his dress blues, and my great grandfather was there all protective and whatnot, and I grew up hearing really lovely stories about him, but I never got the honor of meeting him because when he came back from Vietnam, um, my dad always said he wasn't the same. He came back, and at that time, I don't know that he necessarily got the proper care that he needed. And I hope it's okay. Like, how I don't want any of this to be like triggering or anything. Like, this is full honesty. Is that okay? He coped in ways that were not necessarily healthy when he came back. These are the stories that I was told. He was this incredible man and this wonderful hero, and he came back, and when he came back from Vietnam, and he was all over Southeast Asia during that time, and came back, and he wasn't the same, and he drank a lot, and he passed before I was born. Um, and there's I also have friends that are active duty as well, good friends of mine, and I even had friends that I got to see while I was in Korea because of there are many there's 30 minutes away from me. There was a camp there, but anyway, between my family and friends, it's important to me to support that. Had something like Stack Up been around, had programs like Stack Up been around, maybe that could have changed. Maybe I would have had my grandfather in my life. Maybe if he had access to programs, not to say like gaming, but obviously they have other programs and different ways of obtaining therapy and help and whatnot. Had those avenues been available to my grandfather, maybe I would have grew up with him, maybe he would have been in my life. So it's important to me to help as many, people as I can, whether that's raising money for a charity like Stack Up, or even just getting the word out there, because a lot of their services are free to use, um and maybe that would have made a difference. So apologies if that was long-winded, but
No, absolutely. There's tons and tons of good stuff in there. Um, it's a great segue in terms of the things that you think about when somebody comes back from overseas and they don't necessarily have the support network. And even domestically, issues happen domestically all the time that will create a situation or an environment of nonstop similar symptoms that are tough to process, tough to deal with. And if folks do not get pointed towards the right resources at the right time, not always a pleasant scenario, or
right.
as just not a great thing to be in. So kind of leads us right into the next thing of you've had this drive, this will, this passion that's surrounded who you are and what you've done. You leave Korea, you bring it back stateside, and you've got this community, this cozy, incredible little den that managed to raise an absolutely staggering amount for charity in 2020. What do you think of? What do you tell them? What fires them up? Like, how I can't imagine the things that go through your head when you are leading your buns and saying, "Hey, we're doing a focused fundraiser today for Stack Up, or we've got this going on. We want to do this. We want to raise awareness on this mental health issue." What goes through your head? What do you prep for? And what are the kinds of instantaneous resources that you can point people to in the middle of a stream if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I'm struggling"?
Yeah, there's Well, it was easy. Granted, I sort of have, I guess, what you would call a bleeding heart, and I would love to simultaneously be raising money for several charities all at once. But the reason why this raising money for military, for active duty, and veterans, um, the reason why that came so easy, obviously there's a long-standing, like, growing up and hearing these stories and things with my friends and family. But what I learned, um, when I got to, as a streamer, you get to know your community. People give you little tidbits of their life and little details here and there. I remember one of the first times, um, I was I have trouble, a little bit of trouble with hearing with low tones stemming from something in my childhood, and I remember sharing that with my community and telling them, like, in the game in Dead by Daylight, there's certain aspects of the game that I have trouble hearing, and somebody else was like, "Oh, I also have. I'm a veteran, and I suffer hearing loss from my service, and I also have trouble hearing these tones in Dead by Daylight." And I was like, "Oh, okay." There's one community member, who, someone in my community who is a vet, who shared that aspect, that small detail. I mean, nothing small about it, but shared that very, in just a sentence, shared that brief detail with me. And then as it happened, it started like the chain reaction. And someone was like, "Oh, where did you? I'm also a vet. I'm active duty. I'm this. I'm this. I'm in this branch. I'm in this branch." And you just see it. You just see it in your chat, and it just goes down. And you're like, "Wow, there are so many of my community members who are both active duty and veterans." And the more I learned about the community, the more we had these conversations, the more that number grew. And I just, there are so many community members who, even ones who I thought I knew a little bit about their lives, that we shared and we talk about how your day was or what you ate. Once I started deciding and narrowing down what charity I wanted to raise money for, even more people came forward and said how thankful they were and how proud or how much it meant to them that we were raising money for this cause, because they also, or their significant other, or their parents, or their brother, or their sister. And it was like a ripple effect. So it was easy gearing up for this charity. Talking to my community about this charity was easy because I could pull from very personal, near and dear, familiar, familial, obviously relations with military and connections in that way, and friends that I had. But then it stemmed in sort of into my community itself. So it was very, very easy um, to talk about that. When you say resources and how did I hype people up, um, I'm not gonna lie, Stack Up did make that easy. They provided videos and footage, promotional material to help me tell the story. And what I've learned, because I had never done, I've not been streaming very long. 2 years of streaming is you're still an infant in the streaming world. So this is my first rodeo with raising money for a charity. But what I quickly learned is that when you are passionate about the charity, you have to constantly be talking about it. Like when you're actively raising the money, you play a game, you talk about it in between lobbies. You have to constantly be talking about it, but you have to not run out of energy talking about it. You have to not run out of vigor or passion when you're talking about it. You have to maintain like that. And that's what it's your duty as the leader of the person, like the leader, the one in charge of raising the money, of hosting the charity. You're in charge of maintaining that sort of like elevated hype and keeping it up. And it was so easy to do with this charity, and pulling from my love for my community and the fact that there were so many veterans and active duty in my community, my friends, my family, and the material that I was given. It was easy to hype up. It was easy to get my community, jazzed and proud. And from any small amount to any larger amount that was donated, um it may have been like tiring because we were at it for many days, for a very long time, but it was still easy to keep up the energy, and that's what made the charity successful, even for our modest size community.
You're exactly. You're being modest. You've got From everything that I have seen, the borough's a solid size. It's the cries for more buns, I think, from the little I've seen, happen frequently, but the buns in the borough it's definitely it's growing. It's a growing community. Every time it surges a little bit, you just welcome in everybody's fluff with open arms. That's about as much as I get for a rabbit pun. I'm not very quick on my feet, so the jeez. So you bring everybody in, you welcome in. To a certain extent, it almost sounds effortless. When you have the passion, when you have the time, and you have the consistency, stuff just comes together. Otherwise, how would you manage to raise $17,000? That's something you can hang your hat on. I don't think you wear hats though. So I truly to hear somebody do that with a modest sized community, you think, because streamers, especially streamers in the Dead by Daylight community, share viewership. The viewers are shared amongst streamers, and you see people hopping back and forth in different streams, dropping subs, donations, whatever, and they want to support their favorite streamers. But there are limits. There's limits to what can be done and what can be accomplished. So when you have big shared communities like that, and you're still able to raise a massive pot of money, it's absolutely something to be proud of. And I know you're proud of it, and I know you're proud of your buns, and it's absolutely fabulous. Holy cow, we just went through this whole gambit of who is Tokki, what has Amanda done, what are the things that she is going to do. So if somebody wants to get all warm and cozy in the borough and feel included in life like there's no tomorrow, where are they gonna go? What are your socials? Where do they need to pack up their fluff and come shake their tail, take and just come in and see you? What are they gonna do?
Well, if you want to come hang out with the borough, you can catch me live on twitch.tv 5 days a week. Twitch.tv/Tokki, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm off on Thursdays and Fridays, and Saturday and Sundays I'm back on as well. The socials, Instagram and Twitter, is my handle for both, is Tokki, TTV, TOKKI, TTV is my handle for both. I do have a Patreon as well, where there are members of the borough, and we have Google Hangouts and Patreon gaming nights and things of that nature. And that is a Tokki TTV as well for the Patreon. And those are my main social platforms. We have a Discord, a community Discord as well, which you can get links to and all that jazz when you come hang out with us on Twitch.
So that's absolutely wonderful stuff. We love to see it at Military Gaming League. Whiskey Delta is something that's always very near and dear to my heart, because it doesn't focus just on the gaming world. It focuses on the movers and shakers and all of the things they bring to bear for veterans, for active duty, for their families, the gaming community, and just society at large, in trying to make it better. And without people like Tokki, without yourself, we wouldn't have a show. We wouldn't be able to highlight those folks and help grow their communities by introducing folks that may not have seen it, and just bring a lot more love into the world, like you have in the borough. So thank you so much for coming on to Whiskey Delta. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Folks, thank you. I am Mike Karnowski, aka Devil. We got into the details of the borough with Tokki, and thanks for stopping by for another episode of Whiskey Delta.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.